time you're watching this. Uh, this will be the last one, last beers with Ben for a little while, for a few months probably. And today we're going to talk about number 27, chapter 27, whatever, entitled Duplexity. But first, we're going with Guinness today. Good stuff. This not the original, I guess, Guinness beer, but it's their drought stout, which I haven't even had this in the refrigerator. Just sitting out at room temperature, and let me tell you, it is smooth, super smooth. Uh, Guinness is a staple for beers. I mean, they've been around for like 260 some years or something, so they're doing it right. Seriously, smooth. Love it. So, Duplexity. Um, this was a fun song. Um, Basically, I mean, I wanted to do something semi-heavy, but not sure. Um, the first part of it's kind of this, I don't know, hardcore. Parts of it are heavy, I guess. But really, it was kind of a simple guitar line, plural, for like the first half of the song, um, or first minute and a half or so. Um, Not very difficult to play at all, but effective is what I would say. It was meant to, be simple to play yet effective, but then it switches, in typical Tritagonist fashion, and becomes this more like post-hardcore, uh, you know, distorted guitars, but was more like a simple overdrive sort of thing, heavy reverb effect on it. Um, and I guess becomes more melodic hardcore or post-hardcore. And I think I've mentioned this before in volume one, but um, especially at the time that I was writing and recording these songs, I was listening quite frequently to the band The Drowned God. And I'm not going to say they're like my favorite band or anything, especially since their last album. I'm there's a few good songs on their last album, but overall I thought it was just too. It just wasn't that good. Um, Too much of a change in their sound. Their first two albums or so were just really melodic. I would compare them to, I don't know, like, it's just melodic post-hardcore, I suppose, but I just find it really interesting and really beautiful, and their music was definitely a major influence for that section of this song, where it really was meant to become, arpeggiated and just more about, I guess, harmony, melody, not just straight chugs or more hardcore influenced or anything, but I really wanted these guitar tones to kind of wash over whoever's listening to it. And so that was what was going on with that. And I think for that section where it like becomes post-hardcore and I'm, screaming, yelling, whatever you want to call it, um, I actually think, if I remember correctly, those were like the original rough draft vocals that I recorded back in uh, like July of 2019. Um, most most of the song was re-recorded once I had like the drums down, but I wanted to keep those vocals because just emotionally speaking, I was like, I just don't know if I could redo those as effectively. Um, just something about the way those screams, yells, whatever, sound to me is exactly what I wanted from it. So the story behind this song was so the protagonist wakes up from the dreams from the previous two chapters, and he starts wandering this prison again, um, not really finding anything different per se. Um, he's just sort of wandering around and finding different prison cells and just different areas of this prison, but yet still not really finding many people to interact with. But the main thing to glean from this is that he has, from having this like breakdown, from kind of hitting his rock bottom, his psyche is kind of split in half, at least for this song. And so it's like he's having this inner battle with himself. Um, if you want to think of it as like he's having like a Smeagol Gollum sort of moment, sure, go ahead. He's having this like bickering conversation with himself. But it's, I think most people will read the lyrics and just assume that it's like optimism versus pessimism, which I think it's more than that, but I'll get into that in a minute. But the main thing is that maybe unlike all the other songs before it and probably even after it, hint, hint, uh, this song in particular are two different voices uh, speaking to one another. And so, like, the clean sung vocals obviously represents, the optimistic view, while, like, the screaming and stuff is the more pessimistic view. And, like, even the opening of the song, hard, or mostly hard pan, the clean vocals to, like, the left side, where as the dirty vocals are more panned to the right, and that is consciously to kind of point out like, hey, this is more of a dialogue going on here. And so yeah, the whole song is him wandering, and his psyche is kind of split in two. And like I said, most people think that it's optimism versus pessimism, but the reality of it, and this is where it gets into the personal meaning for me, is I see it more in the lines of like the optimism of faith versus realism or pragmatism of rationality. Um, and so, like, one of the things that they kind of deal with bickering back and forth is, possibility and probability, inevitability, stuff like that. But especially possibility and probability, which I believe I mentioned this in one of the chapters of Volume 1, but my mentor and I, back when, she was still battling cancer, and like we were, especially when we were really starting to become friends, we would have these, friendly arguments. She was about optimistic possibility that anything was possible, and I never negated her. And in fact, the more pessimistic character of this song isn't even trying to negate the more optimistic side of himself. He's just trying to make the argument of, look, be as optimistic as you want to. If you want to believe anything is possible, that's fine. But at the end of the day, what really matters is what's probable and what's going to happen. Saying that anything is possible doesn't do anybody any good if it's implausible to actually happen. And that was something she and I used to talk about a lot back in those early days. And that was my whole point to her was, yeah, anything's possible. I'm not going to, counteract that because I agree. But all of it has to, I don't know, all of it has to become, if everything's possible all the time, then really nothing's possible. What makes things, I guess, worth living is kind of some things being negated, some things being limited in scope. Maybe that's, I don't know, deterministic to some people. I don't know. But that was just my whole point to her. And so, really, in what is kind of said at the beginning of the song, too, is, the word metaxis, which is this, old Greek word kind of used in philosophy, which maybe that goes back to Plato, I don't know. But just the idea of it being, there's like two opposite opposing forces, and you're kind of stuck somewhere in the middle between them. And so it's like faith and doubt. Of course, as a Christian, we want to be, walking in faith all the time, but the reality is that we all have our doubts to whatever degree that may be. And so it's, we're oftentimes walking somewhere in between, absolute faith and absolute doubt, if you will, trying to, figure out some middle ground, maybe. And I'm not even necessarily like absolute doubt in the sense of like disbelief in God or anything, but just having personal reservations. That's what this more pessimistic side is trying to convey is, not complete doubt per se, but more about having reservations. And so it's a song dealing with existential crises. This song personally has no particular like time period for, those 2 years of 2017 through 2019 or so, this song really kind of summarizes what I felt the entire time of dealing with this stuff, from my mentor's passing to being absent from this woman I wanted to marry, to being back in her life again, to being completely separated from her yet again. I felt all this metaxas kind of stuff the entire time. And so, like, I want to focus on the more realistic, pragmatistic, whatever, voice in this song. And then, he for the, Drowned God section of this, like, post-hardcore kind of melodic hardcore, whatever you want to call it, section, he starts out screaming, "Even still, the building's circumference is stationary." And I guess what that's trying to say is that even though, like, this prison is huge, it is kind of fixed. It isn't just growing and growing and growing. And yet it's circular sort of in design. That there's only so much that can be explored there. But at the least, he continues on and says, "A foundation of sorrow negating gladness." And so, being in this prison, he recognizes his own sorrow, and he's not happy. He feels forsaken, feels like a failure in life. And he says specifically, "This existence is left in the absurd's grasp." That's, leading up to that point in my life in 2017 or so, in a lot of ways I considered myself an existential absurdist, philosophically speaking, very much like Albert Camus. He's still one of my heroes. I'm still affected by, the idea of existential absurdism. But as I've kind of pointed out before, this, like, existential anxiety or dread that I felt a lot of times led me towards a nihilistic kind of struggle, which just a struggle. The struggle is kind of the metaxas, if you will. It's being stuck between, okay, I want to walk in faith, yet here's this absurdism going on that, I don't quite understand everything. And yet I'm grappling with loneliness and feeling unloved and unlovable, as he says. Feels like love has abandoned him and his faith has been shattered, and that hope is very far away. And so he's racing in circles trying to fulfill some kind of deeper purpose in life. And still kind of relying on nostalgia, when he felt, youth and felt alive and like he was invincible. And so he asks, has it all been for nothing? And where does the truth lie, between, what is sacred and what is profane? And really kind of ends screaming, what goodness is probable and possible. And so, it may be very depressing, but sorry, not sorry, like, this was what I was dealing with literally on a day-to-day, hourly kind of basis. But, at the end, I wanted the more optimistic character to have the final say. And so, at the very end, he sings, "Every moment a chance of redemption, hopes an eternal spring, eclipsing indecision." And that's like repeated twice in the song, but that's really what I want the final say to be, of having redemption and having hope. And it's a struggle. There's no, I mean, it's just simple as that. Like, there's no deeper meaning than that alone. That you know, it is a struggle to find hope sometimes. And so that's chapter 27. That's duplexity, and that's the last song of volume 2. And unfortunately, I have to point out that it worked out that this song was the last song for volume 2. Um, it just worked out that way, um, in really the last year or so, I guess, because originally I thought what is volume 2, 3, and what is, I guess, volume 4 as well would all be one album. That and then some. Which, I figured that volume 2 would be 20 songs, but it's too much. Um, and I just accept that. But unfortunately, duplexity was also kind of a bookmark, or end of chapter kind of thing, end of volume for this story, because it was the last song that I wrote and pretty much recorded before I found out one day that the woman that I wanted to marry married another man. And I mean, that was a game changer. That was a pretty sudden, a very sudden and um, low blow, I guess. And it's her life, it's her decision and everything. And so, I mean, I can't fault for that. Um, but I had no idea it was coming. No idea whatsoever. And so it really felt ironic to me that, like, this, writing this song and recording it, literally, I think I finished recording it maybe like 2 or 3 weeks before she got married, like the initial rough draft or whatever. And just it being about the struggle and what I felt pretty much the entire time in one way or another just feels ironic, and yet maybe not even ironic, but it just seems fitting for it to be the bookmark or whatever for this section of the story to this point. And the song ends with a short quote from Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, specifically Gandalf talking, and that's pretty much it. Maybe I'll talk more about or her getting married or whatever in the future, but definitely not really on the horizon for the time being. Like, I don't really need to talk about it right now. It just is what it is. So, with that being the end of volume two, uh, I will say that in the future, there obviously is going to be a volume three. Volume three, I've actually pretty much, I'm like 90 to 95% finished with it already. All I have to do with it is, like a handful of paintings for it, which I've already begun that. Um, yeah, I've got to do like the artwork, liner note stuff for it, and I've pretty much recorded the entire album. So all I've got to do is lock in, guitar and bass tones for it, and then mix it, um, to the master stage. So it, yeah, it's going to take some time or whatever, but it's not very much. Um, so the release for that, I should be done with it. Actually, I don't have that much more work on it in actuality, but I'm going to push back a release for it until January, probably early January. So, be on the lookout right after New Year's. That'll probably, it should be like right after the new year. And then volume four, I'm actually working on the drums for it like right now, as in like uh, before I started, recording this video entry, I was working on like the first song for it, the drums for it, and I've got most of it completed already. So it's coming along. It's only going to be 3 songs, so it's going to be a lot easier to record and deal with. So I'm probably going to push back that release. It'll be a 3-song EP. It'll be probably in March or so, and then after that, I plan on writing new music and just kind of releasing slowly as I go along. Really, right now, I'm just pushing myself to get ahead so that I can really take my time later on and actually take a break, because I really haven't taken a break in the last 2 years when it comes to working on this stuff. And, I find myself kind of slowing down and just I'm tired, simply put, but not tired enough to, stop altogether. It's just trying to find a more reasonable pace at this, at this point in time. But if you've made it this far, thanks for watching and thanks for listening. If you haven't bought the album, please go and buy it from iTunes or wherever you get music. I don't know. It's on a bunch of different platforms. Most of it I don't personally use, but I'm glad it's there, And lastly, very lastly, I'm actually considering getting rid of some of the artwork for, volume 1 and volume 2. So if you're interested in buying it, any of the pieces, drop me a line, send me a DM on Facebook or whatever, and, we can work something out. Sure. But that's it for now. So happy listening. Go enjoy a beer if you're into that sort of thing, and cheers.